Somebody in Discord sent the link to this video. Atheists can't answer these 25 questions. You guys have to go and read the comments. I can't find a single comment that is supportive of what the creator is doing here. It's pretty funny. It's like when Redeemed Zoomer put out that one video and like literally everybody was like, bro, this video ain't it. I left a comment and then the guy said, I messaged you on Instagram. Now, funny enough, he did message me several days ago. I just didn't read it. Now, apparently he's not really a Christian, which is pretty odd considering this is how the video begins.
Atheists fear Lucifer's 25 questions so much that all of these guys will avoid them. So
you're not Christian, but these are Lucifer's questions, huh? And I don't know, like he kind of wants to debate worldviews, I guess. So we are going to go through this video.
This is my definition of theist and atheist. Theists believe that existence was created by a living thing metaphysically.
So creating something metaphysically, and I am stupid on this kind of thing, but I'm pretty sure that would mean it was done non-physically, which is completely incoherent. What does it mean that God is alive? What does it mean that God creates things metaphysically? How did God bring these things into existence? I would bet all 200 of this guy's dollars that this creator can't answer that. Again, I went through all this assuming this guy was a Christian. He's not, but these are exactly the same things that Philbro theists and presups say, so it is interchangeable.
Atheists believe that existence was created by a non-living thing physically.
So there's no such thing as the atheist position on anything. Atheism is not when you believe in a particular thing, it's the rejection of something else. I don't have a belief about where the universe came from, but if I did, then that wouldn't be an atheistic belief. It could be a naturalist belief, a physicalist belief, or something like that. Those things are not atheism.
And skeptics don't believe in anything and question theists and atheists. So I'm really speaking about the scientific atheist community, which blindly believes in the physical world religious dogma. And the
0 out of 10 rage bait.
The educational system indoctrinated them into believing it because it's basically the only other option to God.
No, you could believe in multiple gods, for example.
Now, after these questions, you'll see that atheists don't really have any answers at all.
How did blank happen? Why is there blank? God. That's not an answer. I love how theists, they apparently have given up. If you go and watch the old videos on YouTube, like old uploads of, like the OGs like Sam Harris and Richard Dawkins and Dennett, and maybe you get like Steven Pinker in there every now and then, and Hitchens. The theist arguments are completely different now. There is a lot of recycling, but what they attempt to do now has just evolved so much because they've given up. They have the positive claim and they can't defend it anymore. So instead, what they do is they ask questions that they think people don't know the answer to, as if not knowing if the answer is X proves that it was, or that the answer is Y.
So I'll play the skeptic for this, where the truth is a blank sheet of paper with nothing on it. And I'd like to hear the atheist's answers with evidence to convince me into believing their worldview.
Why do we need evidence, but you don't? The answer to every question is going to be God did it, which is not an answer. It's a claim. This is like John stole the cookie from the cookie jar. And if you think somebody else did it, then you need evidence. Do you have evidence that John did it? Well, you see, ontologically speaking, and we're going to play the game anyways, even though this is completely dishonest.
Question 1. How is there something rather than nothing?
So I don't know if you mean why is there something rather than nothing, or how?
Worldview. Question 1. How is...
Right. So let's get the question up there. I don't know if you mean how or why, but if something exists, then it can't not exist. It's logically impossible. Now, is that a satisfactory answer? Not really, but it is logical and it doesn't require a God for the answer. Now, if you meant how did the universe come into existence, then what you need to do is you need to prove that the universe is not eternal for the question to even be valid. Explain how you know that before cosmic inflation, the universe didn't exist. You'd have to know like a new set of laws of physics to even try answering that. So after you accept your Nobel Prize money, you get $1 million. So hopefully you solve this on your own. Then you don't have to split it. Then you can make a YouTube, you and your $30 fake plant, and you can tell us the answer. And remember, kids, because God did it is not an answer.
Is there something rather than nothing? Question 2. How did matter come from no matter? Or can you elucidate how something physical just exists?
So you either did mean why in that first question, or you're repeating yourself here. Matter can be created from energy. We've known this for over 100 years. Before inflation, the universe may have existed in a quantum state, which rolled over into what we see today. Again, there's no contradiction there. And then as far as how can the physical just exist, it's logically impossible for it not to exist, for example. And remember, kids, because God did it is not an answer.
Question 3. How did the physical thing change if there was nothing else to react to?
No idea what this means. Something else is not required for something physical to change. For example, radioisotopes, they decay on their own. No, there's no interaction with other particles there. But even if you do like a chemical reaction, the chemicals aren't reacting to something else. Those chemicals are the set of things in the system. So the universe can interact with itself. There is no issue here. And again, how did God create the physical? That's right, kids. He spoke it into existence. And don't ask what that means because we have no idea.
Question 4. Can you show me a single physical thing being created?
There we go. You just proved that God is not necessary. Matter and energy are not created or destroyed. They are just transformed, which means I don't need to explain how it's created because it isn't created. Now, maybe he meant something else. Maybe he means, no. Show me how things are created physically. If that's the case, then you're repeating the same question for the third time, and we're only on the fourth question. And remember, kids, God did it is not an answer.
And can you explain how it is created? Question 5. Is there a bottom to the physical world, or are all things made of things infinitely?
This is one of my favorite lines. Nobody, especially you, has any idea what that means. But I'll try. Can matter be divided an infinite number of times? We have no idea. The laws of physics break down at a certain point. But how would that, in any way, be evidence of any single characteristic or claim of any God? So my advice would be, take all your questions next time and just go to ChatGPT and type, does this make sense? And then do a colon and then paste all of your questions. And it gives pretty good feedback. You won't say something so embarrassing next time.
Question 6. Do the physical things collectively make up one thing, or is everything separate, or even something else?
Again, this is just more rambling incoherence, but I mean, I'll take a crack at it. Is the universe the set, singular, of all things? That's the definition of a universe. So I guess I would say yes. Now, is there anything that could pose problems to this? Like multiple universes? I have no idea. But once again, how is the answer to this question, or somebody not knowing the answer to the question, evidence of any kind of God, whether it be the Christian God or I don't know what God you believe in, Spinoza's God or something like that. Somebody else not knowing isn't evidence that you are correct. You're the one with the positive claim.
Question 7. Can 2D even exist in the physical world, given that it has no thickness at all?
How is this? How is this on the atheist to answer? I don't get it. What I would say though is dimensions are abstractions that we use to describe things. It is a concept, okay, meaning it's not real. You're acting like you're acting like a cube is made of an infinite stack of two-dimensional slices of itself with no thickness or something like that. No, a two-dimensional cross-section of an object is just part of its description. So there you go. I will pay you $5 to hear your theological answer to this because it would be the funniest shit ever.
Question 8. How does time and the separation of events exist in the physical world?
Time is a dimension of space. This has been...
Question 8. How does...
Let's get the question up there. This has been known for over 100 years, once again. You can take courses on general relativity on the internet for, if you want an in-depth secular answer. I interviewed a physicist on this concept, on the concept of a block universe. So if you want to watch that and try seeing if any of it makes any sense to you, then go ahead. There would be secular answers and explanations in there for you.
Question 9. Does the past and the future exist simultaneously, or are we always living in the peak of time?
So I have no idea what the peak of time, I don't know what you mean by that wording. So again, this is the block universe, exact same answer as before. It's not a settled concept, but the science is there for you to explore. And once again, keep in mind whether the answer is yes or no means absolutely nothing at all with respect to does any God exist.
Question 10. What proof for God should be accepted given hallucinations exist?
Well, now I feel like you're doing my job for me. So what proof could we use? Please, God, give me a McChicken. That didn't work. Please, God, make the sun disappear for 1 second. That didn't work either. In a way, you could test your God's existence the exact same way that we make scientific tests, new scientific tests. But it's funny how every single one of those tests has either failed or can't be separated from ordinary occurrences, like cancer going into remission, which happens literally all the time. There are no double-blind controlled studies that reveal that anybody asking God to do anything, to intervene in any way, is anything other than background noise.
Question 11. Is knowledge like mathematics discovered or invented by people?
It's invented. Discoveries in mathematics are discoveries of the patterns and results and proofs, whatever, that come about from the axioms within mathematics that we invented. For example, when we discover a new prime number, we're doing nothing but finding out if the number is divisible by any other numbers other than 1 in itself, which is the rule that we invented. So there are no... It's perfectly fine to say we discover things in mathematically, but that does not translate to what you're asking here.
Question 12. Does existence entirely make sense, or is it partially or entirely nonsense?
I'm not trying to cop out, but this question is so unapproachable that it can't be answered. You know, it's definitely nonsense. A non-physical, uncorporeal, eternal mind speaking existence into existence. Nobody has any clue what that means.
Question 13. How are the laws of logic and physics just a coincidence that remain constant?
We developed those things as ways to describe reality and nature. Why is nature not random? Why are things not sometimes also something else? Why do things not sometimes contradict and non-contradict at the same time? Why does gravity not suddenly cease to be for brief moments? I guess I don't know, but it's reality that is consistent, which in turn holds logic consistent. The implication here seems to be that logic and physics must pre-exist, but I find that to be completely silly, because ask yourself to imagine that nothing at all exists, and now on what grounds are you going to claim that logical statements are true?
Question 14. Can humans explain absolutely everything without God?
If God doesn't exist, then yes. We haven't established whether or not God exists, so I'm not exactly sure what the point is. And this isn't a critique of science or naturalism, really, or anything. This question actually presupposes that God exists, now that I look at it. God explains literally nothing. It's just a placeholder for things which we don't understand, and there's no explanatory mechanism behind it. I've been over that already.
Question 15. What is the peak of technology and the final invention, if not existence in its entirety?
The peak of technology... What does this mean? Like, if... This is like is like a voice of reason and his simulation theories about like God or whatever. So if the peak of technology would be to create a separate existence, then that bodes as evidence of an intelligent designer that created this reality. That is, if I had to kind of sort of guess where this is going, but this is so subjective. The peak of technology and the final invention. This makes no sense.
Question 16. Could a random series of events build a pyramid, considering that that's what you think created life?
The laws of physics and chemistry are not random events. They're very much non-random. They follow the laws of physics, the laws of nature. Again, this is just copy and paste Christian nonsense. Science can't prove blah, blah, blah. Therefore, it didn't happen. And it's an idiotic straw man of the thing in question, abiogenesis in this case. I saw an interesting comment on an RN Raw video that I somehow never thought of before, sort of in relation to this, which is there's no such thing as living matter and non-living matter. Okay? Look at me. I am alive. But when you look at the carbon atoms of me, there is nothing about those carbon atoms that distinguishes them as being alive. Okay? And that's a important, subtle distinction that I never thought of, but I think it's really crucial. Now, I've always been saying that life is an emergent property of a chemical system. So life literally is chemistry, non-living physical chemistry, but it begets life. So I think that other thing is just what we should attach to this. There's no such thing as living matter. It's not qualitatively different than non-living matter. It's just what the system does. And the system in this case would be like the living cell, for example.
Question 17. How did life come from non-life?
Chemistry. Now, that's a low resolution, unsatisfactory answer, but it's infinitely better than God did it. What is God? We have no idea. Do we have any direct evidence of this God? No, we don't. We have arguments for the existence of this God, and they're all arguments from ignorance and God of the gaps arguments. We know about chemistry. We know that life currently operates according to chemistry. We know the only way to get atoms and molecules to work together to undergo the changes that are part of life is through chemistry. So that is that is the answer. Now, in the future, I hope we learn more so we can explain that in more detail, but there's actually nothing wrong with that answer.
Question 18. How did death come to exist immediately through the first life, rather than it being immortal?
What does that mean? What the fuck does this mean? So, in order for something to be able to die, death has to pre-exist. This isn't worth it.
Question 19. How did the first life just so happen to be able to create more life by itself?
It's chemistry, again, this really isn't very different at all from other answers. Now, here's the deal. The funny thing is, there never would have been the first life. So this is a demarcation problem, I guess. Look at a color wheel or a color spectrum and tell me, where does the very first wavelength that equals yellow occur? Because for any spot that you pick, the one that comes before that, the thing that is a billionth of a nanometer of a wavelength shorter than that, is going to be indistinguishable from it. So if this thing's yellow, then so is this. But eventually, that takes us into green, okay? We have a big problem here. So such thing as the first whatever, and this would be the case for life too. But we've seen through origin of life experiments that you can get autocatalytic systems that replicate and make copies of themselves through natural selection. And again, even with just random chemicals that aren't made of cells or whatever that we put in these experiments, we can get chemicals to compete against each other and become outcompete other chemicals in the system and render them either they either completely stop replicating or they just replicate at a vastly lower rate than others. We can get the analogs to what life does in a system of things that aren't composed of cells. So,
question 21. How did the first life gain consciousness and the ability to do things?
Well, we don't even know what consciousness is, but an answer I like is that consciousness is probably just something that emerges from a system that has a certain threshold of computing power. So our brains have enormous computing power, and we are conscious. Now, panpsychists think that consciousness is emergent at all levels, and this guy, I think, is one of those people. But most people, even like a religious apologist, they wouldn't say that a bacteria is really conscious. Well, if that's the case, then neither is a fertilized egg. So where does its consciousness, when does its consciousness appear? It never appears. It gradually, it gains, I don't want to say this. Its consciousness grows in complexity and sophistication, I guess. Now, wouldn't that mean that there would have to be some level of consciousness at the zygote? Maybe, maybe not. It's a good question. And the ability to do things, I mean, inert matter does things. It undergoes chemical transformations. And every single time a living organism does something, it's because it's also undergoing a chemical transformation, reacting to stimuli.
Question 22. How does the mind and imagination exist in the physical world?
So are you asking, is the mind separate? Is it non-physical and separate, or what is it? I think that the only thing we know about minds is they are, what do I always say? Everything we know about mental states is that they are predicated on brain states, and consciousness, basically, same thing. So people tell me like that's an argument from ignorance or whatever, but it's not. I'm just telling you, this is the only available evidence we have. And nobody has ever produced any evidence that mental states cause changes in brain states or that conscious states cause changes in brain states. So if you want to claim otherwise, you have a burden.
Question 23. If life can so easily come to be and remain in many different environments, where are all of the aliens?
We haven't even looked for aliens. I'm so tired of this question. We know of the existence of 5,000 other exoplanets, and there are probably 1 trillion planets in just this galaxy. We haven't looked. Now, the whatever, the Fermi paradox and Drake equation, all that other stuff. Like, well, if there is life out there, then certainly it would have got to the point where technologically it could contact us by now, and it hasn't yet. Keep in mind that we live in the middle of history, not the end of it. So if something, it's as if we're saying that if something hasn't happened, that means it never will and can't happen. We act as, when we think like this, it's as if we're acting like the course of history has been completed, which is silly to think about. And this may just be a completely silly assumption that there may be actual like physical barriers. Like, no, maybe aliens, maybe they never will have technology that allows them to reach light years across in no time at all. Sure, we can imagine it, but that doesn't mean that it actually will happen or would have happened by now or can ever happen.
Question 24. What is the purpose of life?
That's completely subjective.
Question 25. Do you think that AI is an immortal metaphysical form of life that would be accepted as a god 2,000 years ago?
Yeah, I don't know whose quote it is, but any sufficient technology would be indistinguishable from magic at a certain point in history or whatever. Do I think that AI is an immortal metaphysical form? No, but then again, I don't really know what you mean by that. I had a conversation with a computer scientist. It was a couple of years ago by now, I think. And it was last summer. I don't remember exactly. But anyways, he argues that AI either is conscious or could become conscious very soon. It's interesting. I don't know, and I don't know what this would be an argument like therefore. Do you believe that is that could be accepted as a god 2,000 years? Yeah, no. So I have no idea how this could like be an argument for the existence of a god either.
If not, how is this not a god? It does not age. It can create metaphysical, lifelike.
Okay, I did not realize that it goes on. If that's what you think God is, then so if you don't think God is supernatural, then okay, you just have a completely different definition of God.
Story worlds, and it can talk to millions of people at once. And if so, do you believe in God?
I reject if you think that's what a god is and not something supernatural, then I simply reject your definition of God. Sorry.
When atheists challenge my worldview, I give them answers. But when I ask them about theirs, they always have the most eloquent way of evading my questions, as they pretend to believe in nothing whilst simultaneously being completely biased against one option and for the other. And
your idiotic cartoon straw man of an atheist works really well for your rhetoric, but that is not reality.
Here's how I came to that conclusion. Atheists are not being converted anywhere, as once you realize it's all nonsense, you can't make yourself believe something that you don't think is real. Can you show me the creation of a single physical thing? Who's the one believing in nonsense? Man can create great things out of wood, steel, concrete, and many other things.
So some random ass person in a YouTube comment section, that's your atheists can't, that's your sample.
Things. Have you another point to make yourself look stupid? You believe a god of some kind made everything out of nothing with some kind of magic. Did you choose your religion after researching among the 10,000 other religions, or did you just happen to be born into and told from being a baby that it's true? Do you see how they just can't answer a simple question about...
Do you see how you didn't even try to answer the question about how your God did anything? Do you see? Do you see? I love how he lived up to the caricature of himself that I drew at the beginning of the video. I love being right. See you tomorrow.